Well, we're just over a month away from the Big 12 tournament, and bubble teams are starting to make some moves. Welcome in. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports, and we cover the Big 12 Conference. We're glad that you are here on the podcast, on the radio show, and of course, on the YouTube channel, where we are asking you right now to hit that thumbs up on the video. Appreciate you doing that. It helps us out tremendously. And drop that 5-star rating and review on the podcast. So Saturday, the biggest story is what happened in Manhattan, Kansas, where Kansas State took care of business against KU and continues to play some of the best basketball in the country over the last 3-4 weeks. They have won 5 in a row. 3 of those wins are over ranked opponents. And frankly, they basically dominated KU on Saturday. That's how good this Kansas State team was. And now these wins, West Virginia, at Iowa State, home to Kansas, these are top-of-the-line wins, and K-State has another chance coming up on Tuesday in a huge game against Arizona. Now, it's not just big because Arizona at that point may be ranked in the top 15, but no matter what, they'll be in the top 20. They beat Texas Tech on Saturday. This is the only ranked game K-State has left as of now until the end of the season when they play Iowa State in the final regular season game of the year. After Arizona, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games against unranked competition, and it's highly unlikely any of those teams end up being ranked. So this Arizona game is enormous. But that game on Saturday, K-State was an underdog by about 3.5 points. And I took them because I said, Michael Beasley's in the house. They're playing great hoops. KU's coming off the dominant win against Iowa State. They've been wildly inconsistent. Give me the Wildcats. All right, I'll take the Cats to at least cover the 3.5. I think it opened at 4.5 points between K-State and KU. And K-State just came out and it just gave it to them. They were the more confident team, the more consistent team. And frankly, the score was, an 8-point game, but it didn't feel like an 8-point game. It just didn't between these two teams. And K-State continues to have one of the most tremendous midseason turnarounds that we've seen from a Big 12 team in recent history. Now, here's the thing for K-State. It doesn't look like they're on a bubble yet, at least not according to the latest from Joe Lunardi at ESPN. But I think they should be when he puts out some kind of a bracketology on Monday. At the very least, they should be in the considered category. And that's what Lunardi does. Right now, if you look at the Big 12, the conference breakdown for the Big 12 is 5 locks, 1 likely, 3 bubbles. He's got Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Arizona, all in, obviously. Then he's got Baylor and West Virginia as 9 seeds and BYU as one of the last 4 in. This was on Saturday, going into Saturday. Of course, we'll talk about what happened to BYU and stuff coming up. But then he had UCF as one of the next 4 out, Arizona State next 4 out, and Cincinnati was under the consideration tab. That's where Kansas State should be, at the very least, when Lunardi drops his newest bracketology. The way Kansas State is playing, I know that they've got some bad losses on this resume. Wichita State, the non-conference, Liberty, Drake. I get all of that. I do. But I'm telling you right now, while recency bias should not be everything, it should be something. And Kansas State is playing tremendous. Now, if they go out there and, they start losing games to BYU, Arizona State, and UCF and Cincinnati, all bubble teams, then forget it. Forget it. It's not going to happen for them. But if they keep playing the way they're playing and Kansas State gets to, they've got 8 games left, if they go 6-2 in that stretch and they're 12-8, that will put them at 18-13. If they can win a game or 2, ideally 2 for their sake in the Big 12 tournament, that puts them at the 20-win mark. At that point, I imagine it would be enough. because this has been an incredible turnaround. You win at Ames, that's big time. You beat Kansas. Now, I know Kansas, listen, the last couple of years, they have not been the same team they were for the first 20 under Bill Self. I get all that. But it still is a team that's ranked in the top 15 and has been all season, and right now is a lock for a top 3 seed, maybe a 4 seed when all is said and done. But they're still a top 3 seed when Lenardi had them on Saturday going into the game. So K-State's in a good position and definitely going to have to see how this plays out in the next couple of days after that big win. Then, the other game that really played out in terms of Big 12 bubble talk, there were a couple of them. Cincinnati blasting BYU. That was big for Cincinnati, who was under consideration per Lenardi. And they just, that second half was tremendous for the Bearcats, and they desperately, and I mean desperately, needed that game against BYU. We know BYU is always going to be much tougher at home than it is on the road. But now Cincinnati has cobbled together a couple of good wins against fellow bubble teams after losing 4 straight. And they've done it, in pretty convincing manner, beating UCF on the road and then blowing out BYU at home and just absolutely crushing it in that second half. Jizzle James obviously led the way for him, but that was a big one because when you look at what Lenardi had coming into Saturday, he had BYU as a last 4 in. So as much as it's a good win for Cincinnati, listen, I don't think Cincinnati's going to make the tournament. It's arguably a worse loss for BYU than it is a good win for Cincinnati. Does that make sense? Like, Cincinnati has an opportunity here down the stretch. They still get to play at Iowa State, at West Virginia, at Houston. But you probably have to win 2 of those games to feel like you got a good shot. They're only 4-8 in Big 12 play. Frankly, I don't really get how Cincinnati's being considered. They had an awful non-conference. They had a good non-conference, but they had an awful non-conference schedule. That was the trick. And if you ask a Cincinnati fan, they'll tell you that, they juice up their record with an easy non-con, and then conference play rolls around and it slaps them in the face. So I'm not buying Cincinnati. It feels like it was a worse loss for BYU than anything else at this point. Then the other bubble teams to keep an eye on, UCF had a chance at Baylor, but Baylor took care of business 91-76. And in that game, listen, UCF needs everyone it can get. But boy, the injury bug just keeps biting Baylor, huh? They cannot get out of their own way. They have a lot of talent, but man, they just cannot get out of their own way, and they got bit again on Saturday. So for Baylor, it's a win, but, right? It's like, yeah, we got the win, but we're going to be stretched thin. And no rest for the weary because they go to Houston for a big Monday matchup. That's right. They got to go to number 5 Houston for Big Monday, 8 o'clock Central Time on ESPN. So couldn't come at a worse time. Baylor is stretched thin. Houston is obviously in a very good place right now atop the Big 12 standings with Arizona. Both of them are 11-1. And Baylor is going to be hobbling down to the southeast part of Texas coming up on Monday night. But for UCF, they could have used that one because Lenardi has them as one of the next 4 out. Baylor's solidly in there as a number 9 seed, so it just keeps them where they've been. But, man, these are tough times on the injury front for the Baylor Bears, no doubt about it. Now, the late game, if you stayed up for it, Arizona beating Texas Tech 82-73. And to me, Saturday night in Tucson was more of a compliment for Arizona than it is any kind of disrespect for Texas Tech. I look at Arizona and they feel like a Big 12 team to me. They were dominant in the paint. They're tough, they're physical, and our guy Matthew Postins wrote about this late Saturday, early Sunday on his 5 biggest takeaways from Saturday's Big 12 games. And you should read it. It's a must-read every Sunday morning. He rightfully notes and interestingly notes that Arizona leads the Big 12 in points in the paint per game. I mean, they are tough, they are physical, and guess what? It showed on Saturday night. You saw a team that just outmuscled Texas Tech. Now, you had to stay up late because, of course, ESPN had to put this game on at 10:30 Eastern time. So by the time it wrapped up, it was like 1 a.m. on the East Coast. But if you stayed up for it, Arizona played 40 minutes of tough, physical offense and defense. And, you know, if you've watched them, you know that that's what they're bringing to the table. But if they do that consistently, my gosh, we are due for an all-time clash in Kansas City if it's Arizona and Houston for a Big 12 tournament title. That is going to feel like, you know, one of the great all-time NCAA tournament games based on how those two teams are playing right now. Now, for Tech, they're playing really good. I don't take anything away from a team that goes on the road for a 9:30 Central Time tip in Tucson and loses. JT Toppin had another big game, double-double, but Arizona's defense gave him a tough time. Red Raiders were under 40% from the field, and frankly, that proved to be the difference. And it was Tech's first true road loss of the season. So there's nothing to take away from Texas Tech in this spot. They can be very dangerous, but if you were hoping to see the Big 12 standings tighten up a little bit, you did not get that. We are now looking at basically a two-horse race in the Big 12 standings between Houston and Arizona. That's where we're at. Now, Texas Tech gets a shot at Houston later this month. That'll be on February 24th, which will be a big Monday game in a couple of weeks. But there's still 2 games back at this point. So I didn't think we'd be sitting here with 2 teams separating themselves in early February, but that's what we've got after Saturday's results. It's a 2-horse race at the very top with Houston and Arizona. That's what the Big 12 is shaping up to be right now after Saturday's games. And then the other games of note over the weekend, you had Houston beating Colorado 69-59, so fairly ho-hum there, maybe a little closer than some of us would have expected. Iowa State blew out TCU 82-52. And I'll tell you what, you get Curtis Jones back on the bench. It's a better spot for him, better spot for the team. Dropped 24 points, 5 3-pointers on TCU, and TCU just cannot get out of its own way. They are awful offensively. I mean, absolutely horrible offensively. And then, of course, on the schedule, you also had West Virginia taking care of Utah 72-61 in Morgantown. So that game in particular, I mean, West Virginia was expected to win that game. They were favored to win that game. And Javon Small, I continue to really enjoy watching Javon Small. And maybe I'm a sucker like this, but we've talked a lot about how the transfer portal kind of sucks out the ability to watch a guy grow throughout the years and watch him get better and better and better. At least when guys stay in the Big 12, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm watching Javon Small grow as a player. I'm just doing it from Stillwater to Morgantown, which is bizarre, but he's just a fun kind of old school point guard that you enjoy watching that feels like the perfect fit for a school like West Virginia. It just works. Like, I think of some of the scrappy guards that have played there over the years at West Virginia. I'm trying to think of some of the old names back in the Big East days. There's a couple of guys that come to mind early in the Bob Huggins tenure, and I'm blanking on him. I can see the guy's face. He looked like he was 30 years old. I'm not looking at you in the camera right now because I'm trying to see the guy's face. Oh, Javon Carter. And that was actually in the Big 12 days. That wasn't all that long ago. But Javon Carter comes to mind. But you can go back throughout the years and kind of find guys like that just feel like West Virginia basketball. And he certainly does. So West Virginia is still not a team at this point that is in any trouble. They're a 9 seed per Lenardi in his latest bracketology. So that's exactly where you would expect this team to be, which continues to exceed expectations this year in the Big 12. So kudos to those Mountaineers. and they've now won 2 of 3. They got a tricky stretch coming up. There's no layups, no pun intended. They got BYU at home this week, at Baylor, home to Cincinnati, at Texas Tech. So, I mean, BYU, a bubble team. That's a big game for them. Baylor on the road on Saturday, and then it is Cincinnati, another bubble team next week. So big games coming up on that front, as well as these bubble teams try to figure it all out. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. Glad you're here on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. We have got great merchandise that we have coming in this week on the new Heartland College Sports merch shop. I will link to our new hoodie in the comments. Today I've got my Chiefs zip up on for the big Super Bowl coming up later today. Cannot wait for that. And some new SEC trolling gear that I also want to link to in the show. The shirts are on the website. I will be getting one later this week, and I will share that for you in the description of the show on podcast and on YouTube. So make sure you check that out because, oh man, anytime we are taking swipes at the SEC, I love it, and I know that many of you love it. So that gear will be linked to right here after the show. Can't wait to share that with you. Now, with that, make sure you are liking the video. Helps us out tremendously. And drop that 5-star rating and review. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel. With that being said, I wanted to get to something that really bothered me on Saturday. And what bothered me on Saturday was watching College Game Day from Ames, Iowa, and then watching ESPN roll into Tennessee and Oklahoma. And right out of the gates, the broadcasters are like, oh, the SEC is just so good. It's so talented. It's the greatest conference ever. Oh, my gosh. It is the best thing you could have ever imagined. And I'm sitting there, and I'm saying to myself, okay, you were just in Ames, Iowa. You're not playing the Iowa State game. Okay, maybe you think the OU-Tennessee game is better. Whatever. That's life. But then I got to hear the SEC broadcasters wax poetic about the SEC. And then I'm like, all right, let me go find the Iowa State game on ESPN2 or ESPNU or something. ESPN News. Nope. ESPN Plus. A nice swift kick in the groin from ESPN. Game day is in Ames, and then they bury the game on ESPN Plus. Now, some Iowa State fans responded to my tweets on this, and they said, you don't get it. You're misunderstanding. You're looking at this the wrong way. We should be positive about the fact that it's not a great game, and they still came to Ames, Iowa. That's how we should look at this. Now, I suppose if you are in the business of giving ESPN the benefit of the doubt, you can do that. I don't do that. I never have, and I never will, because whether it's in my personal life or my business life, you have to earn being given the benefit of the doubt. ESPN has not earned my benefit of the doubt. And if they've earned yours, you're entitled to that, but I would love to know why. I would love to know why you feel like ESPN has earned the benefit of the doubt in this case. And by the way, I know Tennessee is a top 5 team. Like, I understand that. But neither of those teams have been playing all that good of basketball. That's just a fact. I mean, OU had a great non-conference, and now they're sitting at 3-7 in the SEC. Tennessee entered that game at 6-4 in the SEC, was still the number 4 team in the country. What they did to college football, they're starting to do in college basketball with the SEC. Now, I will say the Big 12's having a year that is coming in below expectations, right? Kansas, not the team we thought they were going to be. Baylor, ton of injuries, but not as good as we thought they were going to be. Kansas State is turning around, but up until about 2.5 weeks ago was not the team that we thought they were going to be. So, you've got 3 teams there out of the gates that have underachieved largely this year. Houston, Arizona, it's what we expected. Texas Tech, about what we expected. Iowa State, what we expected. But there has been a precipitous drop-off after the top few teams of the Big 12. So, yes, the SEC has arguably had a better season than the Big 12. But what you're seeing now is some of the treatment of the SEC in football applying to basketball, where Tennessee is 6-4 in the SEC and is number 4 in the country. And that's how they justify putting some of these games on television, on big ESPN. Tennessee versus Oklahoma. And it's not about, like, I know Iowa State TCU was a blowout, but so was Tennessee OU. It was a 20-point game at halftime. And wouldn't you want to, if you're going to put College Game Day in Ames because you know it's a great atmosphere for the sport, why wouldn't you then go out there and do the very same thing and share that atmosphere on big ESPN and justify the point of you being there for College Game Day? Right? Wouldn't you do that? I would think that would make sense. And Stormy Cyclone notes here on YouTube, the Big 12 is like the redheaded stepchild for ESPN. That's enormous. That has to be noted. And it's something that I want to make sure that we address and we share with the Big 12 powers that be, because there are plenty of powers that be around the Big 12 who consume the show and know exactly what we're writing about, what we're talking about here at Heartland College Sports. So that was such an insult to bury the game on ESPN Plus after spending College Game Day there, right? It's like the girl comes over to your house, spends the night, and then deletes your number and blocks you. It's like, wait, hold on. I thought we just had a good night. You stayed the night. We had a good time, and now you're blocking me. And there's no clear reason why. Sorry if that analogy is a little too offensive for some of you, but you get the point. That's what they just did to the Big 12. And then you add in the Arizona State-Texas Tech game, or the Arizona-Texas Tech game being on at 10:30 Eastern time. I understand you got to appease the TV partners, but my gosh, I'm falling. My eyes are closing on me in the second half. I'm trying like heck, okay? But my eyes are closing on me. Why? Because I have a normal life with 3 little kids. And it's not just about the little kids. It's just about having a normal life. Okay? And I cannot wait for Turner. I cannot wait for, God willing, CBS and other broadcast partners to take better care of the Big 12. I really can't wait for that, because I'm not going to talk about this every show, but it really is getting tiresome. It is. Bobby says ESPN is putting the vast majority of our games on ESPN Plus. No, you're right. And I'm sick of it. And I know many of you are sick of it as well. With that, I'll give you a Super Bowl prediction to wrap up the show. I will say Chiefs 31, Eagles 27. And I'll give you a good prop bet that I liked here. I got a couple of prop bets floating out there. You do with these what you want. But I will share with you the prop bets that I have for the Super Bowl coming up later today. And for those of you that catch the show after the game ends, well, you can either look at me and say I'm a genius, or you can say I'm an absolute fool. Let's see what I got here. All right. Hold on. Here we go. All right. I won't tell you where I'm betting because we got to get a good sports book on the show. I got the Chiefs minus the 1.5. I'm playing the over 48.5. I'm parlaying that for plus 250. All right, here's a good one. Total players to have a pass attempt, over under 2.5. So basically, will somebody other than Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes have a passing attempt? I'm saying over 2.5. That's plus 180. So I just feel like whether it's Andy Reid doing something shifty, the Eagles trying something at some point in this game, I don't know what it is, but I think that somebody else outside of Hurts and Mahomes is going to have a passing attempt in this game. And I like those odds at plus 180. All right, this is also a good one. Team with the most rushing yards, Chiefs plus 225 to have the most rushing yards. I like that. I think they're going to have to work the ground game hard. And I also think on the other side, Steve Spagnuolo is going to try to bottle up the running game of Philadelphia and basically say to Jalen Hurts, beat me with your arm. And I'm not saying he can't do it. He might be able to do it. But I firmly believe that the Chiefs can get more rushing yards, and it's good odds at plus 225. And here's my long shot. Patrick Mahomes to have 25 plus rushing yards in each half is plus 1,200. That's right, plus 1,200. So it's a long shot, but we know that Mahomes will run in some of these big spots in these types of games. He won't do it in the regular season. He will do it in the Super Bowl. I think the Eagles have a great defensive line that's going to be really giving him a hard time, and he will have to use his legs. 25 plus rushing yards in each half is plus 1,200. That's my long shot bet that I'm looking at for the Super Bowl today. I'm Pete Mundo. We will have links to our merch in the description of the show. And I also just got notification here from the folks who host our merch shop that there is a 22% discount on everything in our shop for the next few days. All right. So 22% off everything in our shop, including this great tumbler. I will link to everything in the show after the show. You guys are great. We so appreciate you. Hit the like, subscribe to the show, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.